You're live, it says.
All right, we're live on Armageddon News. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today we're going to be continuing our look at Dhimmis and the Jizya laws in Islam and how these are used to subjugate non-Muslims. We'll open with a very brief word of introduction, just so you have an idea of who we are and why you should be listening to us. So Lloyd, why don't you give an introduction to yourself first?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lloyd Dion, South African. I lived in the Middle East for 11 years. I worked for a number of years in national security, national defense, and I traveled throughout most of the Middle East. I have lived and spent time in these communities. And yeah, through that experience, I started to study Islam intensively and started to understand how those communities became the way they are. And I wanted to understand the nature and the what was the reason for the violence that I was seeing, for the just the societal collapse and the dysfunction. And my interest really got piqued when I did a counterterrorism course at Leiden University in Holland. And I realized that we could speak, when we were doing the course on religious terrorism, we could discuss Christian terrorists, Buddhist terrorists. When we got to the section on Islam, it was like, okay, fine, let's move on, no questions, let's go. And at the time, ISIS was heavy in the news, and I wanted to talk about ISIS. And I was literally the only person on the course who'd actually been in the field and had experience. And the instructors were terrified of discussing Islam, literally frightened of being sued or whatever the case was. There were also Muslims trolling the comment section so that anytime anything was said, they would pounce and they would call the professors and call the admin, and it was a real problem. And I eventually got hold of some documents that were captured by forces when they took back Raqqa. It was the Dhimmi contract. And I posted those documents from ISIS, which had main Christian sign. And I showed exactly that it was 100% in line with Sunni Islam, and I got banned the next day. So here I am.
All right, and my name is Thaddeus. I am a Christian YouTuber. I've been doing Christian apologetics for around 20 years, but in the last couple years, I've really, the Lord has really been putting on my heart a call to look into Islam and to talk to Muslims. I definitely don't hate any Muslims. I'm here because I love them and I want to reach them and I want to take them out of the horrible system that causes them all kinds of problems. If I didn't care about Muslims, if I actually hated Muslims, then I would just not talk about Islam at all. So that's why I am here. Lloyd and I have been looking into the Sharia law, taking a more high-level approach to looking at Islamic issues. A lot of people look at the Quran, a few people look at the Hadith, but no one's really looking at the Sharia law. And this ultimately is what holds the highest authority in Muslim majority nations, which constitute the vast majority of Muslims around the world. So it's really useful to take a look and see what Islam is really teaching, because the Quran often, despite its claims internally about being a very clear book, is often very ambiguous. It can be interpreted in multiple different ways. And if you don't know the correct scholarly interpretation, then you're just going in circles. You can debate all day what a verse is supposed to mean with some Muslim, and they will hold back. They won't tell you what they know, and you'll get nowhere. But if you look at the Sharia law and you push them, we're finding if you push them on the Sharia law, then they shut up in a hurry because there's no escape. So that's why we're here. As I said, we're going to be taking a look at Jizya laws today and dhimmi status, which is in the Quran. It says that Muslims are commanded to wage war on the Jews and the Christians until they feel themselves subjugated, and until they acknowledge their own inferiority to the superior Muslim rulers. So that's what we're doing today.
Yeah. So shall we just get started from where we picked up? Well, start from where we left off last week.
Yep, and shout out to Sonia Azam in the chat.
Yep, nice to see you again, Sonia. Hope you're well. Right. So I can share my screen. I've got to find. Okay, let me find. Yeah, I always forget where this is in screen 2. Okay. Sharing, and it should be coming up in a second. This is where we ended last week. I'm just waiting for it to pop up on the stream. Okay. Right. So last week we started discussing the law that talks about waging war, and then once you've successfully conquered a territory, you have to make those non-Muslims into dhimmis and force them to pay the jizya. You'll see here that we are referred to as the people of war. So they consider themselves Muslims and the people of war. And it says here that Allah has put an end to discussion. I'm just going to get the laser pointer. Allah has put an end to discussion. This is in reference to Quran 9:29 and 9:5, when the sacred months have passed. So Allah has put an end to discussion and truces between the Muslims and the people of war. We, if we are not Muslims, are the people of war. And except, right, for those who agree to pay the jizya, then the war stops. Let's continue. So we'll start today again with Islamic fun facts. Hopefully this educates Muslims about their ideology or their deen, and allows us to learn a little bit more from the Sharia. Again, we're utilizing the world's most famous Sharia manual, and later on, Thaddeus, we can talk about the fun and games we had with this comment the other day. Anyhow, a Muslim, so in section F1.4 in regards to prayer, it tells us a Muslim who holds the prayer to be obligatory but neglects to perform it until its proper time is over has not committed unbelief, which is fantastic. Rather, he is executed, he's washed, prayed over, and buried in the cemetery.
What a relief. He's still considered a Muslim. He's just executed. That's all.
Yeah, you didn't pray? Well, now notice ISIS, who are not Muslims, were doing exactly this. ISIS is following the Sharia 100% accurately. They are 100% Sunni Sharia compliant. So so if you don't say your prayers, well, once Sharia is enforced fully, if you live in the caliphate and Sharia becomes the law and it is strictly applied, this is what happens. Miss your prayer, you are executed, washed, and buried. Right, so fun and games. Yes, Islam. More Islamic fun facts. This is from the most well-known biography of Muhammad, the Sirat Rasul Allah, the life of Muhammad. And this is about one of Muhammad's companions. And he is sent to conquer a territory and gives him 3 days to either comply and convert or pay the jizya. Anyhow, a woman comes to him and says, "O companion of God's apostle, what rights has a husband over his wife?" And he said, "Woe to you, a woman can never fulfill her husband's rights. So do your utmost to fulfill his claims as best you can." And she said, "By God, if you are the companion of Allah's apostle, Muhammad, you must know what rights a husband has over his wife." And he said to her, "If you were to go back and find him with his nostrils running with pus and blood, and you sucked until you got rid of them, you would not have fulfilled your obligation." That's why I call Islam the religion of warm peace.
A very pleasant image there. And, even if the woman goes this far to serve her husband, she still hasn't gone far enough.
Yeah, this is Islam. This is how it thinks about women. Let's continue. Aisha urged women to take care of their husbands and to recognize the rights that their husbands have over them. She saw these rights as being so great and so important that a woman was barely qualified to wipe the dust from her husband's feet, as she stated. "Oh, womenfolk, if you knew the rights that your husbands have over you, every one of you would wipe the dust from her husband's feet with her face." Reported as Sahih by Ibn Habban and with an Isnad by Al-Bazar. And that's in Ibn al-Jawzi, Ahkam al-Nisa, page 311.
What a pleasant religion here. Women are so low compared to men that they're barely worthy to use their face to wipe men's feet with.
Yeah, this is disgusting. This is Islam. This is Muhammad.
I mean, I don't see how you can deny that Islam treats women really well, and it's, you know, it's almost a feminist religion. That's what we're told by westernized Muslims anyway, right? That it's the original feminist religion, that women have superior rights to men, maybe.
Stop me from laughing. Right, let's continue. So Muhammad, when you poop, don't stink. Because quite literally, Muhammad's poop didn't stink. Let's learn a little bit about the miracles, the poop miracles of Muhammad. Even when the Prophet, praise and peace be upon him, relieved himself, it is reported that the earth would split open and swallow his discharge, and there remained a fragrant aroma. It doesn't say what fragrance, if it was tulips maybe, or lavender, but it was fragrant. And then Lady Aisha, mother of believers, said to the Prophet, when you return after relieving yourself, there is nothing offensive about you. Muhammad replied, O Aisha, don't you know that the earth swallows up what is discharged from the prophets, so that nothing is seen? This is from the book Muhammad, Messenger of Allah, the As-Shifa of Qadi Iyad. Many would say this is the most important and the most quoted of the biographies of Muhammad. So yeah, let's see. Kitab Ash-Shifa, actually I'll get to that in a moment. Let me get to that in just a moment. So if you're ready for more poop miracles, they are coming right up. Let's learn about Muhammad. There's a lengthy transmission of Jabir, Abdullah's son, in which he says they were near the edge of a dried up waterbed that had 2 trees, and a messenger of Allah felt the need to relieve himself. However, there was nothing to screen him. So he went to one of the trees and took hold of a branch, and he said, let me lead you by the permission of Allah, and gently proceeded to lead the tree like a haltered camel. He did the same with the other tree until the trees stood side by side. Then he said to them, join together for me. And this they did. That's the tree and poop miracle of Muhammad. If there are any Muslims in the comments, please let us know more about this. I would love to learn more. Let's continue. This happened another time. So this is a 3rd occasion or 4th occasion, or I don't know how often did he go poop? Come on, once a day? So the stones, so Osama swore to the miracle. I saw the palm trees draw near to each other until they joined, and the stones came together until they formed a mound behind the Prophet. After he had relieved himself, he told Osama to tell them to part. I saw the palm trees and the stones part and return to their places. A similar miracle took place at Hunain.
Muhammad's just an amazing miracle worker here. He's not like healing the sick or feeding the hungry or giving sight to the blind, but he is opening the earth so that he can poop in it.
This is disgusting. Let's continue. One more, just one more, then we move on. When he wanted to defecate, the earth split open and swallowed up his feces and urine, and it gave off a fragrant smell. Aisha said to the Prophet, when you come from relieving yourself, we do not see anything noxious from you. And he said, Aisha, do you not know that the earth swallows up what comes out of the prophets so that none of it is seen? The people of knowledge, that would be the alim, right? The seniors, the imams and so on. The people of knowledge still mention the purity of his feces and urine. The point is that nothing objectionable or unpleasant came from the Prophet. Yes. Yes, the purity of his poop. Yes. Any comments? Anyone regarding that? Right, let's go.
Review this material really gives insight to the modern Muslims of why they're always coming in the chat and being like, your God pooped.
Yeah, that is true. They make a big thing out of it. And now the thing is, Muslims will deny this material in the Sharia. They constantly do. They will deny it flat out. They'll say, I've never heard of it. Oh, I've never heard of that book. Oh, I've never heard that story. However, they clearly believe it. Clearly, they've been raised on it. They'll deny it, but they clearly know it. And it's a big deal to them that Jesus came down, a God becoming a human, whereas here they're making a human into a God. And the best they can do is poop miracles. So this is the Ashifa. This is there's more than one version of it, it seems, which translation of it. This one is the best biography of Prophet Muhammad for over 800 years. It is by Grand Muhaddith Master Abdullah bin Sadek and a couple of Sufis, so and Khadija and Ahmad Darwish, right? So yeah, and then of course we have the original, which I also just read to you from, by Qadi Iyad. And just briefly, the Ashifa, and I looked on different websites, Muslim websites where they sell Muslim books, and they all say the same thing. So this is repeated elsewhere. It is perhaps the most frequently used and commented upon handbook in which Muhammad's life, his qualities, and his miracles are described in every detail. Generally known by its short title Al-Shifa, meaning the healing, this work was so highly admired throughout the Muslim world that it soon acquired a sanctity of its own. It is said if Al-Shifa is found in a house, this house will not suffer any harm. When a sick person reads it or it is recited to him, Allah will restore his health. Al-Shifa remains one of the most commentated books of Islam after Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim.
We're having a little fun here, obviously. We're opening with something somewhat humorous, but on a more serious note, this is actually a good example of how Muslims ignore the Quran, because the Quran repeatedly declares that Muhammad could work no miracles, that he was given no sign other than the Quran itself, and so forth. And yet, when you talk to Muslims, they attribute this book and others like it as being absolutely factual, that Muhammad worked all kinds of miracles, and that, you know, no one could deny his amazing miracles, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just a good example of how secondary source, what we would consider secondary sources, are actually primary in Islam, that the Quran is actually secondary in practice, even though they say otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is important material for people to learn about the kind of man, and also just the information that Muslims hide. They don't want us knowing this. They don't want us reading this. And it's important that we start to learn about it and confront them with this information. So let's have a look. We have to love, or Muslims have to love, in fact, we too, non-Muslims, are meant to love Muhammad like he is Jesus. Let's have a look at Tafsir Ibn Abbas, all right, on Quran verse 331. And it says, say, O Muhammad, right, if you love Allah and his religion, follow me, follow my religion. So this is what Muhammad has to say to the Jews. And Allah will love you. So if you follow Muhammad, Allah will love you. He will increase your love, right, and forgive your sins, right, which were committed when you followed Judaism. And notice, and then when this verse was revealed about the Jews who claimed they were the children of Allah and his beloved ones. So when this verse was revealed, Abdullah ibn Ubay said, Muhammad is commanding us to love him as the Christians loved Jesus. And oddly, Muslims tell us, or Mohammedans tell us, they don't worship Muhammad. So Muhammad is commanding us to love him as the Christians love Jesus. And the Jews said, Muhammad wants us to take him as a compassionate Lord, just as the Christians took Jesus as a compassionate Lord. It should be noted that Ibn Abbas, who is considered, him and Ibn Kathir are considered the finest tafsir writers, Ibn Abbas was Muhammad's cousin. So he knew Muhammad personally. So going on, now if we look at Ibn Kathir, what Ibn Kathir says, who is probably the most important of the writers of tafsir, he says, Allah's love is attained by following the messenger. And notice, Allah's love is only attained by following Muhammad. This honorable ayah judges against those who claim to love Allah, yet do not follow the way of Muhammad. Such people are not true in their claim until they follow the Sharia law of Muhammad and his religion in all his statements, actions, and conditions.
Does this sound a little familiar to anyone?
Yeah.
I'll let you go through the this and then I'll comment.
So Islam is submission to Allah and Muhammad, submission to Allah alone, because if you only worship Allah, Allah will reject you. You must accept Muhammad. Let's have a look at Ibn Kathir. He says here, whoever commits an act that does not conform with our religion, then it will be rejected of him. So Muhammad, say to mankind, if you love Allah, then follow me. And meaning that what you will earn is much more than what you sought in loving Allah. And some people claim that they love Allah, so Allah tested them. Muhammad, say to mankind, if you love Allah, then follow me, Muhammad. And he goes on, say, obey Allah and the messenger. But if they turn away by defying the prophet, then Allah does not like the disbelievers. Allah dislikes and hates disbelievers, thus testifying that defiance of the messenger's way constitutes kufr. So we are all guilty of kufr. Indeed, Allah does not like whoever does this, even if he claims that he loves Allah and seeks a means to approach him, unless and until he follows the unlettered prophet, the final messenger of Allah to mankind. This is the prophet who, if the previous prophets were to have been alive during his time, they would have no choice but to follow, obey, and to abide by Muhammad's law. Just thought that would be interesting. So, yeah, it continues in the Sharia. Not loving the prophet more than all people. It says here in section P, 75.2 in the world's most famous Sharia manual, the prophet said, none of you believes until I am more beloved to him than his wife, his child, self, and all people. Kirmani says, love of the prophet means the will to obey him and not disobey him, this being one of the obligations of Islam. And finally, the prophet said, none of you believes, you're not a Muslim, until your inclinations conform to what I have brought. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so I already alluded to it in the a moment ago and said, does this remind anyone of anything in Christianity? And when we look at the 14th chapter of John, this is where Jesus makes his famous declaration that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God except through me. Well, it seems that the Muslims, in some sense, are making Muhammad the only way to heaven here. And then Jesus goes on to explain what this means a few verses later, and he says, whoever has my commandments and keeps them, it is who loves me, and he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. And he goes on to say, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and he will come to me and make our home with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words, and the word that you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. It seems that the Muslims who wrote this material, whether it originates with Muhammad or it was made up later on, either way, they're hearing from Christians about how they view Jesus, and they're like, oh, that sounds pretty good. Let's say that same kind of thing, only make it about Muhammad.
Yeah, plagiarism. I mean, plagiarism, just disgusting. Yeah, so now on to the meat. If there are no questions in the comments, we'll go on to the meat. Right, so now we're going to talk again about Dhimmis and Jizya, and we'll talk about the Islamic understanding of this particular heinous act in Islam. So from Islam QA, you can see the link on top there, Ask Imam 29402. When the Muslims conquer a non-Muslim land, they will first invite those people to Islam because of the narration of Ibn Abbas, that no nation should be fought with until they are called to Islam. If they accept, then Muslims will not fight them. And if they refuse, they will be asked to pay jizya. If they refuse this, then the Muslims fight them. This is also substantiated by the Quran. Fight against those who believe not in Allah, those who acknowledge not the religion of truth, i.e. Islam, among the people of the scripture, the Jews and the Christians, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. And this is written by Mufti Ibrahim Desai. Islam QA, again, is the world's largest Islamic advice site. It is visited by approximately 400 million Muslims per month. So roughly 1/4 of the Islamic population in the world goes there each month for advice. And let's have another look. I have a question about offensive jihad, again from Islam QA. Does it mean that we are to attack even those non-Muslims who don't do anything against Islam just because we have to propagate Islam? I've been reading Tafsir Usmani for the last month or so. I've read that offensive jihad, first attack, should be done by Muslims for two reasons. The first reason is, for the sake of Allah, includes the propagation of Islam, the extermination of those hindrances which impede the progress and expansion of Islam. Does it mean that we are to attack even those non-Muslims who don't do anything against Islam just because we have to propagate Islam? Please explain to me against which non-Muslims the Muslims have to do jihad. Right, and let's see what Islam QA tells him. We as Muslims firmly believe that the person who doesn't believe in Allah as he is required to is a disbeliever. One of the primary responsibilities of the Muslim ruler is to spread Islam throughout the world. If a country does not allow the propagation of Islam to its inhabitants in a suitable manner, or creates hindrances to the spread of Islam, then the Muslim ruler would be justified in waging jihad against this country, so that the message of Islam can reach its inhabitants. If the kafir allow the spread of Islam peacefully, then we would not wage jihad against them. What does that tell you, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, this fits into the usual pattern of Islam redefining the term so that they can technically say, well, you know, there's no offensive war in Islam. But
We're
then
saving...
if you're a non-Muslim, you're automatically at war with Islam. And if you create any hindrance whatsoever to the propagation of Islam, like, for example, not practicing Sharia law, then you're at war and the Muslim can attack you.
Yeah, but they're saving you from hell. They're fighting with you, murdering you, bombing you, slaughtering you, beheading you to save you from hell. They're doing you a favor.
Well, you know, if they kill me in war before I convert, then I guess I'm still going to hell. So,
well, he goes to heaven for his great reward for killing you, right?
Well, only if he's killed in battle. Only if he's killed. If he's not killed,
well,
you know.
Kill or be killed. No, kill and being killed in jihad. Killing and being killed. He gets the great reward for that. Right. Let's go a step forward. Now, we are going to use a book called the Hidayah. It's a Hanafi book of jurisprudence. This week, I've had someone tell me that the book is filled with fake law. It's not a real book. This is very common. This is very common. And also he said, look, it's filled with fake law and only the Indian Muslims use it. 207 Indian Muslims. Well, 207 million Indian Muslims. Maybe he needs to tell them and not you and me, Thaddeus. But let's have a look. On Islam QA, is the Hanafi book Hidayah as a Sharia manual? Is it a good resource? And let's see what Islam QA says. It is widely accepted by Hanafi scholars and jurists around the world. The author is Burhanuddin, was his title, and Burhanuddin means proof of the religion. This is a name that you give to the highest of scholars who prove that Islam is true. So he's proof of the religion. And it contains knowledge from many teachers who are all experts in all subjects. I haven't seen the word fake yet. Let's have a look. So he was an imam, he was a muhadith, he was a faqih and a mufassir. Okay, well, fine. He seemed to be qualified. Let's have a look. Information about the book by Marghanani, which is the Hidayah, right? If you're studying Mukhtasar al-Quduri before the Hidayah, I don't see any point in studying the Bidayah al-Mubtadi before al-Hidayah. The Hidayah is essentially an extension of the Mubtadi, and I'll explain now why we're mentioning the Mukhtasar al-Quduri. So according to Islam QA, Quduri is the first work that is studied in fiqh across all Muslim lands. So if you're a student of Islamic law, you become an imam or whatever, you first begin by studying the Mukhtasar al-Quduri. Okay, fine and well. So in other words, it's regarded as legitimate Islamic Sharia source. And the final work studied is the Al-Hidayah by Al-Marghanani, the same book we're going to use. It is called the Pride of the Hanafis, right? It's 1,000 pages. It took 12 years to write. He fasted secretly and he really distilled it. It is the culminating fruit of the Hanafi madhab. And of course, it says here, then the next thing is the Fath al-Qadir. And the Fath al-Qadir builds on the Hidayah. It doesn't explain out the text entirely. It is the greatest, most brilliant commentary on the madhab. So according to everything we see here, this book, the Hidayah, is a legitimate manual. It is the prime manual of the Hanafi school of jurisprudence. So the guy that lied to me, you were lying to me. Right, jizya and jihad go together like pork and bacon. Let's have a look at these statements. Any thoughts from you, comments, Thaddeus, before I continue?
No thoughts from me, but there were a couple comments in
Sure.
the chat, just technical things. Someone requested we increase the font size. We'll keep that in mind for future presentations.
This is as big as I can make some of these, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information, so it's kind of...
Yeah. Also, I mean, some people are watching on cell phones. I realize that, but there's a limit to how big I can make some of these things. And, you know,
Yeah, and the slides are pre-prepared, so there's nothing we can do live, but we'll try to keep that in mind. But at the same time, we want to get as much
Yeah.
information on the slides as possible. And there's
Yeah,
also a comment that my volume was low, so I tried turning that up a bit.
Look, pause the video, watch it later, read it on a larger screen, right? I work with two 28-inch 4K monitors, so I prepare on a big screen I can read. So just pause it later, read it on a larger screen. Yeah, so I have tried to make these as large as I can, practically speaking. Whoever abandons jihad that is waged for Allah falls short in his affairs and is on the brink of his own destruction unless Allah extends a blessing to him. So if you don't wage jihad, you are destroying yourself. You're going to hell. Fear Allah and fight against those who oppose him. Fight against those who are in error and go astray. That would be us. The unrighteous and the evildoers, those who are not readers of the Quran. That's you and me and you. So who are not experts in religion, those who have no right to be concerned with this matter by reason of any precedents in accepting Islam. Make ready and prepare to set out against your enemies among the people of the West. Wonder who that could be.
Mystery.
Yeah. Now, notice here that it says here that we always told jihad is defensive. Well, that's not true. Let's look at Sahih Muslim, book 32, hadith 3. If they refuse to accept Islam, demand from them the jizya. Right? So this is when you have, so fight in the name of Allah and in the way of Allah. Fight against those who disbelieve in Allah. Make a holy war. I thought Islam doesn't do holy wars. Sahih Muslim must be lying then. And you know, if you lie in Islam, well, you go straight to hell, right? I mean, meet your enemies who are polytheists, invite them to 3 courses of actions, invite them to accept Islam, invite them to migrate from their lands. Migration to Europe, to the land of the Mujahireen, and inform them if they do so, they shall have all the privileges and obligations of the Muhajirin. So migration is also a form of jihad. Spreading Islam by migration is a form of jihad. And if they refuse to accept Islam, demand the jizya. If they refuse to pay the jizya, seek Allah's help and fight them. When you lay siege to a fort, is that defensive? Laying siege to a fort, is that defensive warfare? That is? Attacking people?
So. I mean, everything in Islam is defensive, so I guess it must be, right?
Okay. And the besieged appeal to you for protection in the name of Allah and His Prophet. Do not accord to them the guarantee of Allah and His Prophet. Accord to them your own guarantee and the guarantee of your companions, for it is a lesser sin that the security be given by you or your companions be broken. So the promise that you give them be broken than the security granted in the name of Allah and His Prophet. It's okay to break your promise. It doesn't say don't do it. It says it's better that you break your own promise than you break a promise given in the name of Allah. Do not let them come out in accordance with Allah's command. Do so at your own command, for you do not know whether or not you will be able to carry out Allah's behest with regards to them. You may not be able to let them go without killing them, because there are stipulations in Sharia that says if these people are men and they're going to go back to their own lands, they will come and fight you again, so you must kill them all.
Yeah, my favorite part of that was that invite them to migrate from their lands, i.e. invite them to give up their lands to the invaders.
Yeah.
But it's just migration, you know, nothing to worry about.
Yeah, it's not theft, not land theft. Let's look at Sunan ibn Majah. A believer should not be killed in retaliation for the murder of a disbeliever. So he gets a little bit of an out, okay? But it says here, a non-Muslim living in a Muslim state under a treaty should not be killed until and unless he commits a crime, okay, which breaks the treaty, like dishonoring the Quran. The crime merits death, or disgracing the Prophet.
Well, I guess we're in trouble because that's all we do is we dishonor the Quran by reading it, and we disgrace the quote-unquote noble Prophet by reading the authentic Islamic sources that describe what he did. So I guess we're in big trouble.
So notice, this is the kind of threat that you're living under. So you're not to be killed unless you disrespect the Quran and Muhammad. Right, let's have a look at this, the commentaries about the Creed of At-Ta'awi, whatever. Al-Bukhari and others have recorded from Abu Huraira that the Prophet said, "But the one in whose hand my life is, the Son of Mary will come down to you as a judge, just and fair. He will demolish the cross, he will kill the swine, and abolish the jizya." because everybody will be Muslims, because Jesus will be a Muslim and he will force everyone, after destroying the church, to convert to Islam. The Prophet Muhammad was sent to all humanity. Had Moses and Jesus been alive, they would have followed him. When Jesus comes down again, he will judge according to the Sharia of Muhammad. So they have co-opted Jesus. They are insisting. I mean, this is what they are teaching Muslims. And it is confirmed that the angels, therefore, it is confirmed that the angels are superior to Jesus. Now, this is a longer passage, but it says, therefore, if it is confirmed that the angels are superior to Jesus, it is confirmed that they are superior to all other prophets, except Muhammad. So the angels are superior. So in other words, in the previous discussion above this, they've confirmed that the angels are superior to Jesus, except for Muhammad, of course.
Yes. And, you know, all the prophets are exactly the same in Islam. This is true of all the prophets, that they're all better than all the other prophets, and they're all the only prophet that the other prophets bow down to. I mean, because we're just told over and over again that Muhammad's just another prophet. He's the same as all the others. So
just a mere warner, except he's superior to all the prophets. In fact, he is at the right hand of Allah, basically. So let's continue. And the apostle said, fight in the name of Allah and in the path of Allah. Combat those who disbelieve in Allah. Okay, I guess that means go in peace, or go in pieces, probably. The Prophet did not commence combat with people without first inviting them to Islam. So this is from a version of the Hidayah. If they respond positively, you are to stop fighting them due to the attainment of the purpose. So the purpose is to make us Muslims. They are to force us to become Mohammedans. If they refuse, they are to invite them to the payment of Jizya, right? And then shall ye fight them, or they shall submit. Now, through the invitation, they come to know that we engage them in battle on account of our religion, and not for stealing their wealth or the enslavement of their families. So we have to know that they are fighting us on behalf of their religion. Perhaps they will respond positively so that the burden of battle is avoided. If the commander engages them in battle before communicating the invitation, he commits a sin. Nevertheless, there is no penalty for doing so, because there is no protection upon us, because we are not Muslims. Thus it becomes like the killing of women and children. And Islam supposedly doesn't kill women and children, but here it says, becomes like the killing of women and children. There is no sin. It says here, if they reject the invitation, seek the help of Allah and engage them in combat, right? And then the reason is Allah helps his friends and destroys his enemies.
I have some very interesting material here that it's a sin to wage offensive war, but if you do, there's no penalty. Just like killing women and children. It's wrong to kill women and children, but if you do, no big deal. They didn't matter anyway.
Exactly. This is the inconsistency and the insanity of Islam. And I have to wonder how Muslims are going to lie about this, because, you know, they're not going to engage in discussion about this. It is forbidden in Sharia law for Muslims to discuss the Sharia law with us. The only time that they can engage in any vague form of discussion of Sharia is if we want to become Muslims, Mohammedans, sorry. But otherwise, no, it is a secret. Sharia it's a big secret. Don't tell the Christians. But guys, we read your books. We've read them. There are dozens, hundreds of them online. It's easy to find them and read them. So
before you go on,
sure.
There's a comment from End Time along the same lines. He says, so according to the reliance of the traveler, the Quran must not be sold to non-Muslims, and people who don't read the Quran are unrighteous. Therefore, you have to accept Islam without knowing anything about it.
Actually, that's a really good point. You're right. Yeah, 3 of the 4 schools of fiqh, basically, it's unlawful. It is not allowed for a Muslim to provide a Quran or any book which references the Quran to non-Muslims. I think the Hanafis allow it, but the other three schools ban it. So yeah, there's a little bit of inconsistency there, but yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah. So let's talk. What's interesting, when they talk about the jizya and the dhimmis, it is in the sections of war, in siyar, that's about warfare, the previous page. That's a section on siyar, warfare. So when the imam conquers a land, that is by the use of force, by mobilization of the army. I thought jihad was about self-improvement. Here they're talking about mobilization of armies. So he may leave the residence settled on it, by imposing jizya on them, right? And I will impose jizya on you. The basis is from the rule that an enemy cannot stay permanently in our territory except through slavery or on payment of jizya. So if you travel into an Islamic country, and I've done different shows on this with Thaddeus, if you travel into the Dar al-Islam, the House of Islam, from the Dar al-Harb, the House of War, because any non-Muslim land is the House of War, and you are the people of war. If you travel into their lands, you can stay a maximum of 12 months, after which they have to make you a dhimmi. You're not allowed to go back home again, because you will take information about the Muslims, about their capabilities, and you will take that back to your people who might make war on them, right? Because it's a war machine, and they will force you to become a dhimmi. However, and you will have to pay jizya. However, they can reduce that length at will. They can make an arbitrary decision and say, okay, well, you know what? We've changed our minds. It's not 12 months, it's 1 month. It's 2 months. Unfortunately, but it says here that you cannot stay permanently in their territory except through slavery. Slavery is 70% of the Hidayah. If you read the introduction, it tells you that 70% of Sharia is slavery. If he stays on for a year, he becomes a dhimmi. The reason is that when he stays on after the directive of the Imam, he agrees to bind himself to the payment of jizya. Thus, he becomes a dhimmi. He is not permitted to return to the Dar al-Harb, the House of War. And the contract of dhimma cannot be terminated. This is because in this is the termination of jizya and making his children declare war on us. In this, there is injury for the Muslims, because they realize that when you insult someone and demean them and enslave them, of course, they will hate you. They're well aware of their actions. And the wealth of the residents of the enemy territory that is gathered by the Muslims without fighting will be spent upon the interests of the Muslims. Jizya is imposed on the people of the book until they pay the jizya with willing submission due to the words of Allah. Those are the words of, this is the exegesis of the Quran in Sharia law, in the fiqh.
Yeah, very loving and peaceful material here. I don't know why anyone would object.
Like I said, religion of war and peace. So now notice, if he conquers their territory prior to this imposition, their men and women are booty due to the permissibility of their enslavement. This is eternal law of Allah. They're allowed to enslave you. If they take over your territory, they can enslave you. And they can do it, remember, and this includes sex slavery. Rotherham. Let's look at the Risala, a treatise on Maliki fiqh. And this is by Malik ibn Malik, who was the founder of the Maliki school of jurisprudence, one of the 4 major Islamic schools, Sunni Islamic schools of jurisprudence. Discussion on jizya. Jizya is taken from the men of the people of Dhimma status. Ibn Rushd defines it thus: what is taken from the people of disbelief in repayment for their security and sparing their lives while they remain unbelievers. So if you don't pay it, they will kill you. So they take the money so that you will not be killed. And then they mention Harbi traders. These are people of war coming to do business, trade in their lands. They must pay a tenth. So a tenth is also levied, that's taxes, from traders who come from the Dar al-Harb, the land of war, beyond the frontiers of Islam.
Very good. We have a good reminder here from Axe Trap in the comment section that dhimmi status is only allowed for Jews and Christians, which is 100% correct. A few people thought it also applied to Zoroastrians, but regardless, it certainly wasn't available to everyone. Anyone who was following one of the so-called pagan religions or Hindus when Muslims invaded India, for those people, the only option was convert or death. And so that's why they can say that the jizya is a mercy, because you get this special privilege, quote unquote special privilege as a Christian, that you have the option of paying a tax and staying a Christian, whereas everyone else, it's convert or die.
Yeah. Look, I didn't include those pages because then we'd be here forever. Then I'd have a 3,000-page presentation. So I just kind of restricted it to generally Christians and Jews. Otherwise, it's just too much of an information dump. Let's have a look at the Kitab al-Kabir, Book of Enormities from Imam Dahabi. This is Book P of the Reliance of the Traveler in terms of collecting taxes, meaning to take revenues other than those which are countenanced by sacred law, such as zakat, and the non-Muslim poll tax, the jizya, defined in section 011.4, or the spoils of war, section 10, which comes before section 11. So again, jizya falls under the section dealing with spoils of war. You're a prisoner of war at the mercy of those, pardon me, who've conquered your land. Now notice something here. In P7517, Umar ibn Khattab said, I have considered sending men to the cities to see who has not made the pilgrimage, the Islamic Hajj, and to collect the non-Muslim poll tax, the jizya, from everyone possessing the means who has not performed Hajj. They are not Muslims. They are not Muslims. So if you haven't done the Hajj, you're not a Muslim, and thus, because you then have to pay the jizya, just like regular non-Muslims.
Very true.
Right, now we're going to have a look at the Tafsir Sahih Bukhari. And so this is a tafsir written about Sahih Bukhari, which, as you know, is the premier collection of hadith in Islam. Imam Bukhari collected all the very best ones. And the Fath al-Bari is the premier commentary on the Sahih Bukhari. And it mentions hadith 25. The discussion goes, I've been commanded to fight the people until Allah says, if they turn in repentance and establish their prayer, in other words, become Muslims, let them go on their way. And then, of course, it says here, I have been commanded, the messenger of Allah said, I have been commanded to fight the people until they testify there's no deity worth worship except Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger. And if they do that, their lives and their property are protected from me. So it simply just repeats what the verse says and what the hadith is saying. It doesn't add anything. It doesn't say, no, it doesn't mean that. It's simply, now notice, the people of innovation are not disbelievers as long as they declare the Tawhid and they accept the Sharia as revelation. So the Sharia and the Sunnah is Wahi. Wahi means it is revelation, secondary revelation, but still revelation from Allah. And we understand from the hadith that whoever restrains from declaring Tawhid should be fought. Anyone who refuses to accept Allah and declare that Allah is one, and in other words, someone who believes in the Trinity, they must be fought. It's that simple. We understand that anyone who doesn't declare that Allah is one must be fought, and that means they must fight everyone. That's the scholarly view from the finest scholars.
Yep, there's no disagreement except by the few modern Muslims who come in the comment section and try to pretend otherwise. There's no disagreement whatsoever in any of the classic scholarship, any of the well-respected scholarship of Islam. They all agree on these points.
And it says the intent of the jizya is so that they would be coerced, forced towards Islam. And it says here, how can we leave fighting those who pay the jizya, right? So the ones who would pay the jizya, they have to fight us until they enter Islam or accept what will lead them to Islam. How can we leave fighting those who pay the jizya until they enter Islam or accept what will lead them? Their whole purpose, their whole point is to fight us in every way possible until they make us bow to Muhammad. We don't bow to Allah, they want you to bow to Muhammad. Right, so now the Mukhtasar al-Quduri, this is the primary text that Muslims, well, Imams and so on would learn, the initial text they would learn. Lying to non-Muslims, cheating them, and backbiting them might become permissible in certain circumstances, as may killing them. Remember, they're in a permanent state of war. They're in a permanent state of war. We are the people of war. We live in the land of war. Now notice it mentions here, the Muslim is not to lose sight of Islamic injunctions in his or her dealings. Either one may not be nice to people at the expense of compromising Islamic principles.
Lovely. You know, they're allowed to be nice to us, as long as it doesn't compromise any Islamic principles, of course, such as, you know, making us feel inferior, for example. So I'm not sure how you be nice to someone and make them feel inferior at the same time, but...
I mean, I would love to actually start reading one of these books that is accurately translated, that actually starts to say nice things. I haven't found one yet. They don't exist. They absolutely don't exist. And when I ask Muslims to quote me, so cite me, they say that's a fake Sharia manual. That's a fake Sharia manual. That's a fake fiqh manual. That's a fake scholar. Everything in Islam is a weak hadith. You know, when convenient, the Quran's a weak hadith, Allah's a weak hadith, Muhammad's a weak hadith, the Sahih hadith are weak hadith, everything's a weak hadith. But I asked them, so, okay, you don't like this Sharia manual, this fiqh manual? You have 4 schools of jurisprudence, you have major scholars. Name me your favorite Sharia manual. Give me the name. Name me the book we should be reading. If not this one, which one? And like, silence.
Yeah, I've been using the same tactic in comments lately, that I ask people for a Sharia source and they never ever respond. It's very interesting how they have no interest in telling us about their sources.
Psychotronic, the US is in a permanent state of war. Here's another one of those idiots. Iran is at war with you. If you read the Constitution of Iran, Psychotronic, Trump is at war with Iran. Now, Psychotronic has never read the Constitution of Iran. If you go to page 1 of the Constitution of Iran, it says in the formation of its Iranian, the Revolutionary Guards Corps, due diligence must be paid not only to the normal secular duties, but also the religious formation. It's called the religious army. And they state that the duty of the Iranian Guard Corps, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, is to take the jihad to the world. Okay, I can actually quote, I can pull it up and quote. It's not part of this discussion, so I won't, but I actually have it, and I've shown it before on the show. So the whole point of Iran, in their constitution, they state that they need to take the jihad to the entire world and conquer the entire world for Allah and make it Muslim. If you then continue, you go to various other chapters, they will tell you that part of that is that they need to reach out, they need to train, they need to make friends with, they need to embed themselves with every revolutionary group that they can find, and they need to infiltrate and make war in every country. So how about you go and read the Iranian constitution and tell me where the peace is, okay? Yes, you haven't, exactly, you haven't read it. So how about you read it and then come and tell me where the peace is, all right? So moving on. Say, O mankind, I am the messenger of Allah to you all. So now they insist that Muhammad is here for all mankind, not just for the Arabs. So, and he says it, again, they reinforce, even if Moses were alive on the earth today, he would have no option but to follow Muhammad, because Muhammad modeled himself as an Old Testament prophet and he replaced Moses.
Yeah, but right. Muhammad somehow manages to replace all the prophets. He's the new Moses, he's the new Jesus.
Correct, he is the new Jesus, that's certain. And it says, you know, this is Al-Shafi. Now we've just read from we've read extracts from two of the major Sharia manuals or fiqh manuals of, look, I'm just going to use the word Sharia for fiqh, I don't care, okay? Sharia is the exegesis of Allah's law written by a committee of men, okay? Allah's man-made committee-designed law, right? Extracted from the Quran and the Sunnah. And the fiqh is the exegesis of that into law. I get that, right? However, I'm just going to call it the Sharia and let's move on with our lives. So this is Shafi. This is the head of the school, of the 4 schools of jurisprudence. This is the Shafi school. This is the man who created that school. Slay the polytheists wherever you find them and lie in ambush for them everywhere. And he said, and Allah said, fight those who do not believe in Allah and do not practice the religion of Islam. Those who have been given the book, of those who have been given the book until they pay the jizya and have been humbled. Quran 9:29. And the apostle of Allah said, I shall continue to fight the unbelievers until they say there is no God but Allah, right? Umar accepted the tradition and collected the jizya on the basis of the Quranic communication. So somehow we get debates about the Quran, but somehow the Allah, Muhammad, and the companions of Allah and Muhammad somehow just read the Quran and, okay, that's what it says, let's do it. So the jizya was collected on the basis of the Quranic communication of those who have been given the book until they pay the jizya out of hand and have been humbled on the basis of the Quran, which states that the unbelievers should be fought until they accept Islam. Black and white, simple, right? So if someone can then send me a copy of the Sharia, which we can all understand and read and look at, something authoritative that says, you know what, this is not the case. I haven't found one. There isn't one, but hey, by all means, send me one.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Sharia is making it so that there's no ambiguities whatsoever in what the Quran and Hadith say. It's telling us exactly how the scholars have always interpreted those works, and anyone who tries to come up with their own interpretation is doing an innovation of Islam, so to speak. And Muhammad said anyone who tries to innovate in Islam is committing a grave sin. So we're going to go with what the scholars tell us Islam means, and you can accept that or reject it. If you reject it, then whatever, you can call yourself a Muslim if you want, but you're not really a Muslim.
Yeah. Psychotronic 13, Trump is more in common with the Constitution of Iran than he knows, and he doesn't read. No, you don't read, buddy. We've understood this. You don't read. And do me a favor, talk on the topic, right? Stay on topic.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to discuss Islam. We're not here to discuss U.S. politics. Lloyd isn't even from the United States. And I never discuss, I am from the United States, but I never discuss politics. I'm not interested in politics. I'm interested in Christianity and Islam.
Yeah. Besides, I spent 11 years in the Middle East making sure that people didn't blow things up. So really, I know a little bit more about it than you do. So the Army's treatment of the, so we'll start winding down. Should we keep it to roughly an hour? I mean, we can maybe just finish this page and then we can have a little discussion and open it up a little bit. Well, what's your thoughts, Thaddeus?
I mean, to me, it feels like we haven't been going all that long.
No, we haven't. We've been taking it easy, but yeah, we can go fine until you. Okay, so let's have a look at this book, the Kitab al-Siyar al-Sagir. This is a book on Islamic international law. Now notice up top here, it says 100 great books of Islamic civilization. So there are different projects afoot by different governments of the world, Islamic governments, to translate what they consider to be the finest books of Islamic law and Islamic whatever, okay? And Mohammedan law and Mohammedan history and Mohammedan barbarity and disgusting behavior. And what we have is the Pakistani government has started an initiative to translate. I believe this is the Pakistani government that initiated this, even the Bangladeshi government. And oddly enough, in America, there's a couple of universities that have been funded heavily to start translating various important Islamic books. That's why we have these in English now. And so this is happening, fortunately, and we can get these. So this is a book on international law in Islam. And let's see what it tells us in chapter 2 on the army's treatment of the disbelievers. So interestingly, Jizya and Dhimmis falls under the army. We are prisoners of war, as I said. When the Muslim army fights against a country where the message of Islam has already reached, it is good if they are again invited to accept Islam. Did that sound defensive, Thaddeus?
No.
No, exactly. But if that is not done, then there's no harm. Wow, this is no surprise. If an ambush is made against them, is that defensive? If an ambush is made against them, against the disbelievers in the daytime or during the night or any blinking time without inviting them, it makes no difference.
I like how they specify the time of day.
You have to invite them, but if you don't, it's okay. You don't have to. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's Islamic law for you. You must invite them to Islam, but if you don't, it's whatever, just attack them and you make an ambush. What the heck? Pick the day, pick the time, doesn't matter. So yeah, that's Islamic law. It just whatever is convenient for them. So when a group of guaranteed citizens, those are dhimmis, in other words, you have a guarantee of not being killed out of hand, breaks the covenant, right? The al-Dhimma, the people of the Dhimma, break the covenant along with their women, and they move away to the territory of war. Now, just notice, they call anything outside of the lands of Islam the territory of war. They are at war with us permanently, and this is where Thaddeus has been correct every time he said it, that Islam is at war with the rest of the world. They are permanently at war. Now, notice if the apostates get power and force in their area, this now becomes the territory of disbelief. These are Muslims who then reject Islam, right? And if they move to the territory of war, that's areas outside of Islamic control. And they speak of the people of rebellion. That will be us and people who just don't want Islamic rule. And the guaranteed citizens, the dhimmis, and of course the Muslims in their fight against the people of justice. The people of justice are the Muslims. We are the people of rebellion, the people of war. We are the worst of creatures. They are the best of creation.
We have some chatter in the comments. I don't know if you want to end the presentation here and take some off-topic chatter, or
what's the chatter?
About how, yeah, Islam has its issues, but so does everyone else. that kind of thing. And
Who's saying this?
This is
Trump is.
Avraham.
So what?
Avraham.
Okay, hold on a second. Just before I get to that, Trump is stepping up the war with Iran during COVID-19. Iran is not. Iran is a Muslim country. They follow the Sharia. They call the Islamic. Their official name is the Islamic Republic of Iran, and their constitution is based on the Quran and the Sharia. Right? I'm just reading to you what the Quran and the Sharia say and how Muslims interpret their law. They are at war with everyone. If Trump is going to fight them, it is defensive because Iran is at war with the rest of the world. They are officially, in their minds, in their constitution, at war with the rest of the world. Now, either you want to start making sense or, yeah, there'll be consequences for you. But, yeah, moving on to the next topic. So where's this? I don't see this one.
So there's a couple comments. First, he said something about the oldest church in the world being in Palestine, as if somehow that means that Islam isn't against Christians, I guess, was the idea of that. He says, I'm not saying Muslims or Arabs are perfect, but let's look at what others are doing. And then he claims that taqiyya isn't practiced by Arabs, but it's only done in Iran. Basically saying it's a Shia practice and not a Sunni practice, I guess. And then he goes on about some stuff about the Crusades, all kinds of off-topic stuff, but vaguely related.
It's interesting that we've discussed and we've done shows on all of these except the Crusades. We haven't done a specific show on the Crusades, and we should. But as we know, Islam has at least 6 or 7 specifically named forms of religious deceit. Right? I mean, off the top of my head, we have taqiyya, which is well known. Taqiyya in Sunni Islam is called mudarat, right? Although if you read the Sunni documents, you will find, and we've done shows on this, we've discussed this in detail, that taqiyya is also used very much by the Sunnis. In fact, it says in Ibn Kathir that taqiyya will continue till the end of the world, right? If you read the Reliance of the Traveler, there's a section on lying, specifically on lying, how to lie. Right. I'm not sure there's a section on that in the Bible. Feel free to give me the page number, but it's certainly. And of course, we have taqiyya, we have kitman, taysir, darura, muruna, and we've mentioned taqiyya. And of course, Islam itself as a legal system, because Islam is a legal system, it is built on a form of deception, a form of legal trickery called hiyal. We did an entire show on that. Check on the Reasoned Answers Apologetics channel, Thaddeus's channel. We have an entire show. We've done that with Sonia. Islam is based on legal trickery. Hiyal is the basis of Islam. It allows them to break any promise, any oath, any contract, any law, while technically still observing the letter of the law while breaking that law. So it is an actual doctrine. It's written in various books. All of these are doctrines written in books. They're identified. They're named. So if you're going to say that these things exist, I want you to show me where precisely. Right. I'd like to know where in the American Constitution it is written that they must make war on the world, because the Iranians have it written in their constitution, and it's also written in their Sharia. It's written in their fiqh. It's written in their Quran. So we are discussing Islam, and if, for argument's sake, the Martians had a rule that said they must kill everybody, that's nice, but we're talking about the Muslims having the same rule to kill everyone, and it doesn't make it okay for the Muslims to have the rule if the Martians, but the Martians, the Martians are not a problem today.
Well put. And I think that there's a good possibility that's exactly what's going on now. Some legal lying here that Avraham is pretending not to be a Muslim, but is actually a Muslim. It certainly feels that way. I don't know 100% sure, obviously. And by saying, taqiyya is not practiced by the Arabs, yeah, because you use a different term, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And then there was a legitimate question about innovation in Islam. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I pulled up
Avraham, about the Crusades. So there were 543 battles against Europe committed by Muslims. Remember, within 100 years of Muhammad's death, they had invaded to 20 miles from Paris, right? Paris. Now, the French had not done anything to them. They invaded. Now, don't forget, after 462 years of endless battles against Europe, finally, 15 Crusades battles were launched. So, no, I'm afraid you're very, very mistaken. Yeah. Go on, Thaddeus.
So I went ahead and pulled up a question from Islam QA about bid'ah, i.e. innovation.
Oh, yeah.
The questioner asks, is every innovation worse or more serious than other sins, or just some of them? I.e. implying that at least some innovation is. And then they go on, their answer says, the Prophet told us, every innovation is going astray, and every going astray will be in the fire. And that comes from Sahih Muslim and Nasiya. The scholars have
Nasai.
the scholars have explained that even though every innovation is misguidance, it's also a kind of sin, and sins vary in degree, et cetera, et cetera. Innovation is prohibited in general terms. And it's described as misguidance. As in the Hadith, beware of newly innovated matters, for every newly innovated matter is an innovation. Every innovation is going astray, and every going astray will be in the fire. So I think that that answers the question about where I got that idea from. It's taught in the Hadith that if you try to change what Islam teaches, you are committing serious crime.
You will find that in the Reliance of the Traveler as well. There's an entire section on bid'ah. We actually did a discussion, but that was a couple of months ago on your channel. We did a show on that.
Yes.
So, yeah. Yeah. Correct. So well, just this one slide up here. So it says here, section...
yeah, you'll have to pull it back up.
I mean, I'll have to share again or what?
Yeah, share again, I meant, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I can just, sorry, I get very angry about this because I'm tired of the lies and I'm tired of ignorant people making really specious arguments. Notice on this slide, just to finish off this particular slide, it says here, the prohibition of warlike operations during the sacred months has been abrogated. Here they're referring to 9:5, slay the polytheists wherever you find them, right? It is reported from Mujahid that he says that the prohibition of war in the sacred months has been abrogated. The abrogating verse is the saying of Allah, slay the polytheists. When the sacred months have passed, slay the polytheists wherever you find them, lie in wait for them. And it has abrogated a different verse, right? So now we have permission to go to war. And the sacred months then have passed, and we are now, what, 1400 years past that point, they're at war, right? Hence, they invaded, within 3 years of Muhammad's death, the Muslims had invaded 28 countries, right? Because they're a religion of warm peace, right? And I didn't say war and peace, I said warm peace. So yeah, this is what they are. This is what they do. I mean, violence is Islam is based on deception and violence. And in fact, if you read, you know, the quote that says, war is deception. Everyone always says, well, you know, that the Israelis, you know, Mossad says that war is deception or whatever. Well, Muhammad said it first. If you look in the Quran, he says war is deception. However, if you look at the older Qurans, if you read some of the older Qurans from the 1600s, and you can get those online, they're English translations from that period. And Muhammad actually says something longer. The proper translation is, war is a game of deception. Muhammad said war is a game of deception.
Excellent. I think that's probably a good place to end today's presentation. We have some additional questions, and we will welcome off-topic questions now that we've completed the presentation. We do have more material.
Can I read one thing? I'll stop here. Can I read one thing about the Crusades? Would that be acceptable?
Sure.
Yeah, just go on and I'll bring it up in the meantime.
Sure. So you can be thinking about this question next. So Takia Watch, and as a side note, check out Takia Watch on YouTube. They often post videos of Muslim speakers in Muslim nations where they can be more honest about what Islam teaches, saying the same kinds of things we say. So they come up with a lot of good material on that. But the question is, why are we not seeing all 56 of the Muslim majority nations implementing full Sharia law?
Well, Sharia, yeah, it's not fully implemented yet. I mean, if you look at the Taliban in Afghanistan, they were attempting to implement full Sharia, and we know how well that went. And if you look at ISIS, they implemented full Sharia, and we know how well that went. So people revolt against it. It's backwards, it's violent, it's brutal, it's satanic. So yeah, there are people complaining that they haven't implemented full Sharia, but no one wants it. Not really. They realize that Western commerce, Western thinking, technology actually works better. So they realize, and they kind of find ways around it. Look at Dubai. I lived there for 11 years. It was a great place. I did very well there, but it's not implementing full Sharia because they realize the superiority of Western civilization, Western culture and technology and thinking. Yeah. Yeah, that is. Anything else?
Yep. No, I agree that even most Muslims, like probably well over 99% of Muslims, are much better than Islam, which, I mean, it's great. I appreciate that most Muslims are good, honest people. The problem is you're part of a belief system that is not. And your moral conscience should be telling you to reject that belief system. So we're just pointing out what Islam teaches. It's your choice whether you can continue to accept it or you reject it. But for the majority of Muslims, they are kept in the dark about what Islam teaches at the highest levels because only scholars are allowed to have this knowledge. It's very secret knowledge. They don't want it getting out. They know that the common Muslim will only have all kinds of questions about this. You're encouraged not to ask questions. You're encouraged not to have any kinds of doubts. So they don't tell this material to the average Muslim.
Correct. Yeah. Look, Islam divides Muslims into 4 categories, right? 4 levels. The lowest level is called the Ibadah, which is termed Islam for the masses. IBARA, Ibadah, Islam for the masses. This is where your average YouTube expert, quote unquote, is found. They know nothing. They're not taught the rest. The Sharia forbids Muslims from discussing the Sharia with non-Muslims. Now, the higher levels would be your imams, for instance. They operate at what's called the Ishara level. Now, lots of people make criticism about the Jews who have got this 4 different levels, the different levels in the Sod level, and they make fun of that. And well, Islam is exactly the same thing. Your imams are again divided into 4 categories. Your lower levels of imams who are basically just basic jurists, like clerks almost, and then you've got more higher levels. Then you have a 3rd level called the Lata'if, come from Latifa, and then you've got your 4th level, which is the Haqa'iq. So you have 4 levels in Islam, and your average Muslim is down here, and he's basically a mushroom. And you know what they say about mushrooms? You keep them in the dark, and you feed them Muhammad's fragrant poop. So yeah, that's where they're stuck. All right. So yeah. So I just want to discuss this briefly. This is I don't know if it's going to be a problem for me to enlarge the font. It's still going to be hard to read anyway. So I'm just going to read it off the screen. Another time we can do a show on this. I want to talk to Abraham, who's first he's telling us Takia. No, you're wrong, dude. You're lying. You give me a Sharia citation. You give me the book, a manual of fiqh, or I'm going to call you a liar. Okay? I want to see the page number. I want to see the author name, the book, the chapter. You give me that, right? From your 4 schools, you've got these famous 4 schools of fiqh in Islam. You show me. Your opinion is worth nothing. I don't accept it. So let's see. What about the Crusades? The First Crusade began during the Middle Ages in the year 1095 as the result of a cry for help against invading Islamic armies. This was 460 years after the first Christian city was overrun by Muslim armies, 457 years after Jerusalem was conquered by Muslim armies, 453 years after Egypt was taken from Christendom by Muslim armies, 443 years after Muslim armies invaded and plundered Italy. It took 400 years to push them out of Italy. And they plundered the coast. They took slaves. They took what? At least 1.5 million slaves from Europe, at least. This was 443 years, 427 years after Muslim armies laid siege to Constantinople, 380 years after Spain was conquered by Muslim armies, 363 years after France was invaded by Muslim armies, 249 years after Rome was attacked by Muslim armies, which is why the Vatican has that wall. Then the Crusades happened to defend Islam, to defend Christendom. This was after 4 centuries, 462 years of church burnings, killings, enslavement, and forced conversions of Christians. By this time, the Crusades began. By the time the Crusades began, 3/4 of the Christian world had been conquered and its people forced to convert or be enslaved under Islam. Without the sacrifices and of the heroic defense made of Europe by Charles Martel, and I'll have you guys note, because apparently Catholics are satanic and going to hell, and only people who go to Joel Osteen's church are like the real Christians, right? because the Protestants are the real deal. I'm a Protestant, but so Catholics, evil satanic Catholics like Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours in 732, the Templar Knights, evil Catholics, Al Cid's reconquest in 1085, Catholic, the Venetian fleet at Lepanto in 1571, Catholic, the Polish and Austrian knights at the gates of Vienna in 1683, Catholic, the Serbian Hajduks fighting the Ottoman Turks in 1804, Catholic. Europe would have been converted to Islam just like the Middle East and North Africa. I'll pause there. That's it. So don't tell me about, Islam didn't do nothing. And here's a list. Here's a list of all these. This is not even a complete list on the right here. This is not even a complete list of everything that these people did, invaded everywhere before the Crusades even started. I'll pause there.
Very good. We were talking earlier a little bit about, just kind of mentioned as a side note,
Sonia's asking about the Baphomet picture. Sorry, yeah, go on. Right, yeah.
About the Muslim genocide in India. Axtrap has recommended a particular source. I have gone ahead and pulled that up. I haven't verified it, all the fine details, but the general gist of it definitely seems to be correct. So it says, with the invasion, this is from SikhNet.com. It says, with the invasion of India by Muhammad Ghazni in 1000 AD, began the Muslim invasion into the Indian subcontinents that went on for centuries, et cetera, et cetera. I want to highlight this line here, that the Bahami sultans had an annual agenda of killing a minimum of 100,000 Hindus each year. The history of medieval India is full of such incidents. The Holocaust lasted for 800 years. We have elaborate literary evidence of the world's biggest Holocaust from existing sources. And this is because the Muslims bragged about this in their own sources, as it goes on to say here. These contemporary records boasted about and glorified the crimes that were committed and the genocides of tens of millions of Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jainists, mass rapes of women, and the destruction of thousands of ancient temples and libraries, well documented, and provide solid proof to the world's biggest Holocaust.
Wow. Wow. I was unaware of that. I knew there were millions, tens of millions murdered, but wow.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a number in mind, but what the Muslim armies did to India was absolutely brutal, because they didn't have this option of jizya. It was convert or die. So practically speaking, they couldn't kill every single person, but they made it a point of continually killing more and more with hope that others would convert.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's horrific. That's horrific. Sonia, you asked about the Baphomet image. If we can do that next week, I'll bring that up. I won't forget. I'll do that for you. And then Daniel asked about when is the Islamic Jihad going to be kicked off in the West? Now, according to the writings, two answers. Should we do this quickly, Thaddeus?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. According to the writings,
we're just taking rapid fire questions here,
okay.
Just looking at whatever comes. So
we would have to do a show on the Muslim Brotherhood, because the current leader of Al-Qaeda is a Muslim Brotherhood member. The head of ISIS was apparently a Muslim Brotherhood member. And of course, Osama bin Laden was a Muslim Brotherhood member. And the Muslim Brotherhood is the world's largest terrorist and also the world's largest secret organization. They've got something like 2 to 3 million members, but they have affiliates that number 100 million, right? And they're a secret organization. And but let's not get into that too much. Now, Al-Qaeda had a plan, a 21-year plan divided into 7 phases, each one 3 years long, ending in 2021, where they would kick off a worldwide revolution, an Islamic revolution. 9/11, according to the writings of Osama bin Laden, was the opening shot in a 21-year war plan, which was to inspire the Muslims. Now, I will say under Obama, he was on track up to the beginning of phase 6, right, up to 2018. And then under President Trump, and look, I don't care about what your politics are. My job is to make sure that Muslims didn't blow things up and kill people in the Middle East, okay? So, and while you were pushing beans in your office chair, so under President Trump, he has pushed this plan back through what he has done, the actions he's taken. He has managed to force this plan back. Now, I think they will very likely align with the Muslim Brotherhood plan, which is designed to kick off in 2028. That's 8 years from now. So the Muslim Brotherhood have a 100-year plan. and their intent is to infiltrate every political institution and cause political agitation, which they are now. They're in stage 4. They're at least in stage 4 of their 5-stage plan. So they are successfully implementing their plan, and their aim is to create cells, and the Iranians are instrumental, psychotronic. The Iranians are instrumental in this plan to create camps all across the US, South America, infiltrate across the border. They're learning Spanish in South America. And they will do basically typically what we'd see is like a Tet offensive, as happened in Vietnam. They would have small cells that will then sow terror across the US. That is their plan. And they want to take over America because America is the one big force that will hold them back, that can stop them. So they need to make sure America falls. They're doing the same in Europe. So they have 8 more years, and they're basically infiltrating in politics. And in fact, the bulk of their money is not spent on political infiltration. The bulk of their money is spent on universities and schools. In other words, converting students, lecturers, and making them sympathetic to Islam, otherwise converting them to Islam. They're spending 50, 60 times the money on universities than they are on bankrolling politics. So 8 years.
We got a couple comments about the Muslim Brotherhood in the chat. I know that you know a lot more about them than I do, so I won't attempt to address the questions, or well, not really questions, but comments. So yeah. Sonia said that the Muslim Brotherhood military wing is Hamas.
Trap. They're the eastern wing. They're the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah.
Axe Trap said that the Muslim Brotherhood is Egyptian jihadist group with active militants of 70,000.
Okay, so they were founded in Germany, right? Sorry, they were founded in Egypt. My bad. Sorry. I mean, we can do a show on that. I've done shows before, but it's a lot of detailed information. So they were founded in Egypt. However, under Obama, they found favor, right? They found favor and they grew. They became the government. They were kicked out. Morsi was kicked out. However, because they are no longer wanted, because they actually implemented Sharia, people hated it, right? And they got kicked out. What happened then is they found a nice soft underbelly in Europe. And they have focused their attention on Germany and France. This is where they're focusing their attention. They found that ignorance is certainly bliss. And they're also very active in Russia, Finland. Oddly, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. So they're finding places where they can get in undetected. They are utilizing. Don't forget that most of the operations are non-kinetic. Most of the operations are based on infiltration, deception. It's really just bombs going off as a site is almost a distraction, right? But they're utilizing a form of warfare which is called 4th generation warfare, and their methodology is derived from Russian propaganda techniques, okay, and as well as coupled with very short but intense episodes of extreme violence. This is based on a design from Chairman Mao called the People's War. When he took over communist China, he developed this methodology. It was learned by the ANC. They used it to take over South Africa. So the People's War involves very, very sophisticated propaganda methods as well as extreme brutal violence, short episodes of extreme brutal violence. And coupled together, it works extremely well. And this is what they are doing. That's why you see these. So notice 9/11. Did it make Islam more popular or less popular? Suddenly, after 9/11, Islam was everywhere. Islam's a religion of peace. Everyone's talking about it. Why? Because it was the opening shot in a campaign. It was the starting gun of a campaign. And the bulk of that campaign was ideological warfare, propaganda warfare. That's why you see Islam everywhere. Because that was, okay, guys, we're starting. That was it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was a question. It was just a comment, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Scott Cannon did say that the Muslim Brotherhood wants to infiltrate the United States to overthrow the leadership from
the inside. They claim that they've already had a secret government embedded within the U.S. government as early as 1992.
Yes. He actually said 1992. I think you probably said that before you talked about, but you kind of covered.
Yeah, I've read their documents. I've written reports for other groups. I've had to write and do some research and write. But yeah, they have extensive. They're in there. They're in there.
Ibrahim has some more pointless comments about how he's proud of his heritage and whatnot. Great. I'm glad you're proud of
He's
your
saying the
heritage.
same nonsense that
Yeah.
Rashida Tlaib said, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it. You know, what's the name? Rashida Tlaib? Tlaib? Actually, it's actually Talib, which is short for Taliban. Talib is teachers, you know, the Taliban. So you think about it. I mean, if you read the history and the family membership of who was Hillary Huma Abedin, her family is Muslim Brotherhood. She was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood for sure. Her mother and her father certainly they worked for Muslim Brotherhood Front, funded by Saudi Arabia. Their office of their business was in the same office as the Dawah organization for the Saudi government in London. It still is today, in fact. So she was at the highest levels, right next to Hillary Clinton. And don't forget the Awan brothers. How much data did they steal and give to Pakistan? They were inside the DNC service.
Very good stuff. Um, Scott just said, do you know that Solomon's Temple was being or has been built in Brazil 2017? Well, a attempt to copy it anyway. I did hear about that church doing that, but I'm not sure what relevance that has to anything. There were some joking comments about how the Jews are responsible for everything, but we know those were a joke. We know that people here are not anti-Jewish.
Yeah. Michael van der Vlies says Hamas is very active in the last few weeks. So Hamas is the wing. If you read the charter of Hamas, and I suggest you do, especially not the new one because they've stuck some nonsense in there, but read the older charter. There's some interesting stuff in their charter, some really fascinating stuff in that charter, including ritual magic. But anyway, so Hamas is the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and CARE is Hamas. CARE is Hamas. So CARE is very, very active in the US. They're very active in US politics. And in fact, back under Bush, they were very much involved in Republican politics through Grover Norquist. He was basically a puppet. He was a front for them. Now, I don't think that they're that much involved, but they certainly have made huge inroads into the Democratic Party. Obama's administration, Hillary Clinton, they have been deep inside there. So yeah, it seems that under Trump, I think there's been a lot of changes. But for instance, it's possible that the head of the CIA at the time, what was his name, Brennan? He was a Shia. So you know, there's a lot of questions. I mean, we don't have all the answers, but there's certainly hints.
So Ibrahim has gone from pointless comments that have no bearing on anything to outright lies. He's now claiming that Saudi Arabia is actively building churches. No, churches are illegal in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, where's the address? Because he knows that it says that no two religions are allowed. We covered this last week, in fact, that quote where two religions are not allowed in Arabia. They're not allowed to. Yeah, if you can give us an address, Ibrahim, you know, otherwise, yeah, we're going to have to call you misinformed, or maybe you're deliberately using taqiyya. That word again. Wow, they're building churches. What's it with white churches, white crusaders, white?
Yeah, what is this obsession with race? We haven't mentioned race once. Race is a modern concept that it would be totally foreign to Christianity. Why are you obsessed about race? We don't give a crap what color skin someone has. It's no different than what color eyes someone has. You're going to say all people with brown eyes are superior to other people? I mean, that's essentially what you're saying when you're acting like there's something different about white people. I mean, come on.
Ja, Michael van der Vlies says die jongens 'n Dutch surname. Miskien kan jy my verstaan, Michael. Ja, my familie kom van in 1693 is daar 'n boer van Holland. Het hy van Holland gekom en ja, so dis waar my familienaam kom. And yeah, I'll switch to English. I don't speak Afrikaans so often. It takes me a few minutes to switch languages to get the vocabulary and stuff going. Dutch farmer, 1693, married a blah, 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 me, Dutch surname. Auf meiner Mutterseite habe ich deutsche Familie, denn die kamen aus Deutschland, aus Schwaben, denn ich kann auch Deutsch. So yes, German, etc., Dutch. A little bit of this, English as well. So bit of a mix. Yeah.
So Axtrap, now that he knows that you're from South Africa, that in South Africa they have a propaganda organization dedicated to Ahmed Deedat's teachings called IPCI.
Yeah, I know them. I get some books from them sometimes. That's where I got those D-Dot books, the ones we did the first show, D-Dot Destroyed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a whole show on DDOT on my channel. That video has gotten more downvotes than any other video I've ever done, which means it has attracted more Muslim attention than any other.
Needs to be
So
revisited then.
yeah, so DDOT seems to be alive and well in the memory of Muslims everywhere, and he's the new prophet of Islam, I think.
Yeah, it needs to be noted that not one of D-Dot's arguments were original, right? We have to note that D-Dot is not the originator, and these Muslims that are these Mohammedans, sorry, that are in the comments are not using original arguments. They're recycling the same old arguments, and those arguments derive from effectively three people. One of them only partially have his books been translated to English. That's called Ibn Hazm. He had a student called Ibn Taymiyyah, who's the expert on jihad, and we covered him a couple of weeks ago. And he wrote a book about basically a Christ-bashing, Bible-bashing, Christian-bashing book. It was a polemic, a very dishonest polemic against Christianity by Ibn Taymiyyah. And Ibn Taymiyyah had a student called Ibn Qayyim. So Ibn Laymiyyah and Ibn Layyim have each written a major book based on Ibn Hazm's polemics, very faulty polemics. And we have been studying Ibn Layyim's book, and it is filled with bluntly fabricated biblical verses. For instance, he misquotes, mistranslates. I mean, he actually just literally misquotes, or he takes 3 or 4 different verses, smooshes them together, and comes up with the Bible says, and this verse doesn't exist. He'll say it's in the book of Daniel, and it's like, there's no such verse. There's nothing. So they have written incredibly dishonest polemics like 800 years ago, and these are simply being repeated over and over by Muslims. So the source is not these modern people. These are 800-year-old sources. And if you go back to these scholars, they know nothing. They're idiots.
Yeah, we're actually planning on doing another show on DDOT soon. And then after doing a second one on DDOT, we're going to transition to looking at some of these originators of the arguments. And when you get back to the original, the arguments in some way are even worse because they did it in a period where very few people, even in Christianity, knew the Bible. Certainly none of the people who the books were written to had any clue what was in the Bible. So they could just make up whatever they wanted. They didn't even have to try to pretend that it was legitimate. They just say, yeah, there's a verse in the Bible that says the next prophet will be named Muhammad and he'll be born in Mecca, and it's right in the Bible. Why do people deny it?
And yeah, now that we know the Bible, we realize these guys were making it up because they realized they could get away with it. Now, if we start exposing them as we start going through their book, we can show just how the major scholars of Islam were complete train wrecks. They were idiots. They were liars. Yeah, so I think maybe, so that's us. So it's been like 90 minutes. Shall we?
Let's take one more question because I think this one's pretty interesting from
Okay,
Black
sure.
Angel. He asks why most of the freak imams we're seeing on YouTube, and in particular the channel Memory TV, come from Egypt. It seems like they're even worse than Saudi Arabia. So do you have any idea why?
Muslim Brotherhood influence.
There you go.
Muslim Brotherhood are extremely violent. They are hardcore. They're hardcore, but also they have another. If you read through their of their charter, Article 2 of their charter. Read Article 2, go to the last sentence, the last couple of words, and you'll see one of the things they do is basically ritual magic, right? They so they're into some very, very odd esoteric Islamic mysticism, mystical magic. So there's, if you believe in things like demons and such, then there are influences that they are messing with that are probably not healthy as well.
Excellent. So I think that we had a really good discussion today. We got through a lot of material, and then we took a lot of interesting questions from the audience. So I think this was a really good show. We'll be back on this channel probably next week to finish up the subject of Dhimmi status and Jizya. And we will be doing a show on my channel soon, looking at attempts to find Muhammad in the Bible, starting with DDOT and then moving on to other attempts. Yeah. So be sure you're subscribed to Armageddon News, and then head over to my channel, Reasoned Answers Apologetic Videos. and look for announcements about when the precise times of those shows. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good afternoon, evening, morning, middle of the night, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. God bless. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all very much for your support. Take care.